Imagine this. You meet someone who is absolutely convinced that a celebrity or a boss or even a stranger is secretly in love with them. Not just a passing thought, but an unshakable certainty. Every song on the radio feels like a hidden message. Every small gesture is interpreted as a sign. And no amount of denial, no matter how clear, can shake that belief. This is more than a crush. And it's not fantasy. It's something psychiatry calls erotomania. It also has a French name because it was discovered by a French psychiatrist who first described it in 1921. Erotomania is a rare delusional disorder where someone firmly believes another person, usually of higher social status, or someone that they feel is just out of reach, is secretly in love with them. It's not about desire in the usual sense. It's about delusion. What makes it so striking is that the person experiencing it often feels chosen, even when the other person has never actually shown romantic interest at all. So how does erotomania usually show up? What does it actually look like in a person's life? Most often, it starts with a very specific belief that someone is already in love with you. Not that they might be, not that they could potentially be, but that they definitely are. And usually that someone is a person of higher status, like your boss or a doctor or a physician, a celebrity, someone who feels powerful, important, or untouchable, even if they've never met this person in real life. And the person experiencing erotomania interprets every little detail as proof of this love or of this bond. For instance, if the supposed love interest waves to a crowd, they'll believe it was directed directly or specifically at them. If the person wears a certain color, they'll see it as a secret message. A pause in conversation, a simple gesture like a hand gesture, or even just silence, it all gets woven into the delusion as evidence of hidden love. Often they'll talk about secret codes or messages sent through songs on the radio or TV shows or even social media posts. Everyday events get reinterpreted until they feel almost supernatural. And the belief isn't fleeting. It doesn't just come and go. It becomes the center of their world. For the person with erotomania, the story doesn't stop there either. Many feel compelled to act on it. That might mean sending letters, showing up at workplaces, or trying to make direct contact with the person that they believe they have this love connection with. Sometimes it can escalate into stalking or, in some rare but tragic cases, confrontation when the imagined relationship doesn't play out how they imagined it would. That's part of why erotomania can be so distressing, not only for the person experiencing it, but also for the person who's being miscast as a secret lover. So why does the brain do this? Why would someone's mind convince them of a love that isn't really there? At its core, erotomania is a problem of misfiring salience. Salience is the brain's ability to decide what matters, like what details are important and which ones we should just ignore. What details are important and which ones we should just ignore. and what we should assign meaning to. In a healthy brain, you might notice someone wearing an orange shirt, but you don't attach any deep meaning to it. In erotomania, the filter gets disrupted. Suddenly, an orange shirt isn't just an orange shirt anymore. It's a secret sign meant only for you. This usually all ties back to the dopamine system, the same chemical messenger that fuels motivation, reward, and learning. In conditions like schizophrenia, schizoaffective, and other psychotic disorders, dopamine activity can become disorganized. The brain starts tagging irrelevant things as significant and starts placing meaning on things that don't mean anything at all. Small gestures, random coincidences, even total silence can feel like undeniable proof of love. The frontal lobes also play a role in this. They're responsible for reality testing. The frontal lobe is basically your internal fact checker. When the frontal lobes can't override the misfiring signals, the delusion stays locked in place. No matter how much evidence piles up against it, the belief remains unshakable. To the person experiencing erotomania, it feels more real than reality itself. And this isn't just about brain chemistry in isolation. It's about isolation, stress, trauma, and underlying psychiatric conditions like schizophrenia, schizoaffective, bipolar disorder, or severe depression with psychosis. These can all raise the risk because the brain becomes vulnerable, and love, which is the most powerful human drive we have, gets twisted into something delusional and all-consuming. Erotomania isn't just brain science in a vacuum. Yeah, dopamine and the frontal lobes are part of the story, but so are life experiences and the human need for connection. People who develop erotomania are often isolated, lonely, or have experienced trauma that makes genuine intimacy feel out of reach to them. The mind, in trying to soothe that emptiness, creates a story, one where they're not only wanted, but chosen. That's why this condition sits at the crossroads of biology, psychology, and social context. A brain vulnerable to psychosis misinterprets signals. A life filled with rejection or trauma provides fertile ground for those misinterpretations to grow. And our culture, with its endless stream of celebrity images and parasocial relationships, gives the delusion a cast of characters to latch onto. So yeah, it's about brain chemistry, but it's also about unmet needs, human longing, and a world that sometimes makes us feel more disconnected than ever. Erotomania isn't just neurons misfiring, it's loneliness dressed up as love, amplified by a brain that can't tell the difference. Erotomania isn't just neurons misfiring, it's loneliness dressed up as love, amplified by a brain that can't tell the difference. Because erotomania is rare, there aren't endless cases to point to that I can tell you about, but the ones that are documented paint a vivid picture of just how powerful and disruptive these delusions can be. One of the earliest written descriptions came from the French psychiatrist himself in 1921. He described women who believed men of higher social status were deeply in love with them, sending secret signals through the smallest gestures. For some, the conviction lasted years, and no amount of rejection, no matter how blunt, could convince them otherwise. And then more recently, some cases have made headlines when erotomanic delusions involve public figures. For instance, John Hinckley Jr., who attempted to assassinate President Ronald Reagan in 1981, is often used as an example of this condition because he believed that the actress Jodie Foster was in love with him and that by carrying out a dramatic, grand act, he could prove his devotion to her. His delusion wasn't harmless, and it shaped his choices in catastrophic ways and changed his life's trajectory. Another chilling example was Margaret Mary Ray, who was a woman with schizophrenia who repeatedly stalked talk show host David Letterman in the 1980s and 90s. She stole his car, showed up at his home, and insisted she was his wife. Letterman himself later said he felt more sad than angry, recognizing that what was driving her wasn't malice at all, but untreated mental illness. Her story highlights how erotomania can spiral when it collides with fame, media, and vulnerability. Most cases, though, never make the news. They unfold quietly in someone's home, with someone convinced their doctor is secretly in love with them, or that a neighbor is sending hidden messages. Sometimes it ends with heartbreak and psychiatric care. Other times, sadly, it escalates to legal intervention or worse. What's consistent is the absolute conviction and the way that delusion reshapes the lives of both the person experiencing it and the person caught up inside of the love and the delusion, the object of the delusion. So, what do we actually do about erotomania? Well, like many delusional disorders, treatment can be challenging because the person doesn't usually believe they're ill. If you're absolutely convinced that someone is in love with you, you don't see it as a problem, you just see it as reality. That lack of insight is one of the biggest hurdles to delusional disorders. Medication is often the starting point. Antipsychotics, which target dopamine pathways, can reduce the intensity of delusional beliefs and help the brain recenter and recalibrate what it labels as important and what it assigns meaning to. Sometimes mood stabilizers or antidepressants are added if the erotomania is connected to bipolar disorder or mood disorder or severe depression with psychotic features. Therapy can also help, but it has to be handled very carefully. You cannot just go in yelling, "You're wrong, this isn't real," because typically that backfires horribly. Traditional cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, for example, can gently challenge the delusion and help the person build alternative explanations for what they're perceiving. But it's slow work, and direct confrontation, like I said, saying that's not real, often backfires. The goal is to strengthen reality testing without shattering trust. Safety is another part of treatment that is important because erotomania can spill over into the real world through stalking, harassment, or repeated contact attempts. Sometimes legal measures, restraining orders, or hospitalizations are necessary. This is where psychiatry, law enforcement, and families often find themselves in difficult territory trying to navigate and protect everyone involved while still providing compassionate care. Recovery is possible, but it's rarely quick. It doesn't happen overnight. Delusions are sticky. They don't fade easily. But with the right combination of medication, therapy, and support, people can regain stability, and the person who once felt like the center of a secret love story can slowly return to their own life. And that ultimately is the goal. Not to take away the need for connection, right? But to anchor it back in reality where true connection can actually grow. When we talk about erotomania, it's easy to get caught up in the strangeness of it. The idea of someone believing a celebrity or a stranger is secretly in love with them But at the heart of this disorder is something deeply human, a longing to be wanted, a desire to be validated, a hunger to be chosen, and a mind that's reaching for connection but has just lost its anchor in reality. And that's what makes it so important to approach erotomania with compassion. Yes, it can be frightening, especially for the people drawn into the delusion. Yes, it definitely requires firm boundaries, legal protection sometimes, and careful treatment. But beneath it all is a person whose brain has misfired on one of the most powerful human drives we have, which is the drive to love and be loved. By understanding erotomania, we don't just understand a rare psychiatric mental health condition, we also get a mirror held up to something universal, our need for connection, and how fragile the line can be between healthy longing and delusional conviction. If we can see the humanity beneath the delusion, then maybe we can respond not just with fear or judgment, but with empathy and with hope that healing is possible. Okay, that's all for this topic. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.